Hello and welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to go over something a little different. It's not going to produce some flashy output. It might seem a little boring actually, but this is something that is used all the time in productions when you're creating a setup, when you're doing effects rigs. You typically want to do anything you can to speed up the process. So I'm going to show you something called Opdigits. Now what Opdigits is going to do for us is just give us the numeric component of a name, typically at the end of a name, of any node we point it to. That might sound a little confusing, but I'm going to show you a quick little example of how useful this is. You don't have to follow along in your own session of Houdini if you don't want. You can just watch what I'm doing, or if you want to, you can always open up Houdini and try it out yourself. We're just going to drop down a geometry node and create a little mock-up scene file here. Let's just say that this was an effects node. So we can type in effects, and we'll just say geo and do _0. That's going to be critical here for this setup to work. And now let's dive in and just drop down a sphere node. And we'll do our typical null output, wire it in, and let's just call it out. Now typically you would then do your setup in here and create something like a render geometry node. So we could call this render, and it could be FX, and again we would do 0 because we want these to be a matched set. If you've watched any of my lectures on Udemy, you know this is a very common workflow here. You create your geometry or your effects up here, and then you'll bring it all into a render node for later when we actually go into the mantra nodes. So dive into the render and do an object merge into this object, and we can go find the output of our effect geometry here. Now this is all standard and this is all manual. We haven't used Opdigits yet, but now I'm going to show you how this is useful and why it is useful. We can go and just say up here where the 0 is, do the little backtick symbol. It's next to your 1 key on your keyboard, and type in Opdigits. And look at what it tells us here. It says return the numeric suffix of a node name, and we just need to give it the path. So we can actually just do 2 periods here, ... and now do your ending tick. And if we middle click, you'll see it still says the exact same thing we had typed in manually, or what we linked to, geo0. And that's because when you use double periods here, it is instructing this to not look at the node that is containing this, but go up to the parent node, which would be EblingFx 0. So if we were to go here and change this to a 1, dive back in, you're going to see now it says Geo1, but we get a little warning because there is no Geo1 node. That's just to show you what's happening, so change that back to 0. Let's also do one more thing just so we have a little bit of a visual display here, visual feedback. Drop down a transform node, plug it in, and let's go to our translate X, and we can do the same thing and just type in Opdigits, and we'll do the same thing, 2 periods. And now we'll see nothing right now, but what this is going to do is actually just translate in the X positive axis whatever numbers we have in our naming of our parent node. So this fx _ geo _ 0, obviously it's going to put 0 in here. If you look at here, we see our sphere move over 1 unit. Now this is nothing to do with how you would really set up your rig. I'm just doing this so we're going to see a visual feedback that this is working. So now let's just say you set all this up, and now you would want to go over to your output node. You're setting up your render. So drop down a mantra node, and let's just call this, like effects beauty _ 0. And you would go over here to your rendering or your objects. I usually disable this candidate objects and force my object. So you could pick right here, render effects 0. Now this is how we would typically do it all manually, but once again, you can do Opdigits. And we will just use a single period this time. And if we middle click, you'll see it replace it with the 0. Replaces it with the 1, but you want to keep it on 0. There's a reason behind all of this and indexing from 0. So go back over to your object. Again, this is just a simplified example. If you were setting up some type of rig that you knew you were going to have to to duplicate numerous times in a shot, and you're going to have to then have numerous render nodes, and you're going to have to go in and link this many times. We can automate that by using this Opdigits. So now here's where this is going to be very apparent what it does. Let's say you got this all set up and now you want to duplicate it because you're going to do another simulation and you know you're going to have to then have a render node for it. You can just select this, Alt and left drag it over, and now look what happens. We automatically have another sphere here. It's automatically moved it over by a unit of 1 because our parent name has a 1 in it. You could do this multiple times. And obviously, automatically, it's going to just increment the number that it puts at the end of each name. So it's going to go 0, 1, 2, 3. If you go into any of these render nodes, you're going to see that it's linked to the correct node, fx_geo3, and we're in EblingFx 3. If you then also went over to your out nodes, you could just duplicate this for as many times as you made this duplication of your rig. And again, if you look, it automatically links to the correct one. And if you click this, you'll even see it has it selected fx_1, fx_2, and so on. So this might seem a little boring compared to the normal videos that I put out there, but this is something that's used in real production. This is a way you can automate your rig creation and rig setup and just scene organization. Imagine I've had to actually do this sometimes where I had a setup that I had to manually duplicate like 20 times just to get a shot done. And if you set it up in a slightly structured way like this, you can just copy and paste nodes and it automatically does everything for you, especially in something like this where it will automatically bring in your geometry from the correct parent node. That's just fantastic. It helps speed your workflow up. And then over here, you can obviously set up your render nodes and have everything just work for you. So it's not something you're going to use all the time, but this is actually a very useful trick. And if you've never heard of Opdigits, which many people haven't, it's not something that comes up all the time. Now you have at least seen a use for it, and hopefully it'll help you just work a little faster. So that's all I'm going to show you in this quick little video here. Houdini has many tricks in it for doing things like this to just help you get through your setups faster, and I will show you a couple more of these in between some of the more interesting videos. I don't want to show you too many of these because they're a little boring, to be honest, but it's information that is useful and you should know it. So there's that. Alright, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like if you liked what you saw. There will be a lot more content going online shortly, so check back frequently. Or just subscribe and you'll get notified when there's something new to look at. With that being said, I will see you in the next lecture.